Bangladesh releases terror group chief. Al-Qaeda-linked terrorist Rahmani walks free. Lashkar-e-Taiba Rahmani plotted terror attacks on India. Anti-India sentiment after Hasina ouster. Bangladesh security alarm for India.
In an unsurprising twist of events that absolutely no one saw coming, viewer, except anyone with a shred of common sense, Bangladesh's recent release of a dangerous anti-India terrorist, Jashimuddin Rahmani, has left certain Indian commentators in quite the pickle. These very voices were just a short while ago hailing the turmoil in Bangladesh as a noble people's revolt. You know, the kind of grassroots uprising that springs forth when a nation simply cannot tolerate another second under the thumb of a leader turned autocrat. Except, oops, now it seems that the people's revolt had a few too many people who were, shall we say, less interested in democracy and more into, well, terrorism. Let's rewind for a moment to when the unrest in Bangladesh was gaining momentum. The narrative that took hold in certain Indian media circles was almost poetic. A valiant struggle against an increasingly authoritarian leader, Sheikh Hasina, who was apparently stifling democracy with every breath she took. And we know that there were overreaches and overreactions. The opposition was cast as the last hope for a nation teetering on the brink of dictatorship. Ah, how noble, how romantic, how delightfully black and white. Because just a few months ago, these same Gyanis were mocking India and saying, by the end of this year, Bangladesh will overtake India in per capita GDP. And just months later, they were celebrating the fall of the regime that made possible this big spike in Bangladesh's per capita GDP. Never mind the inconvenient little details, like the fact that the opposition in Bangladesh includes elements who've never really been fans of democratic norms to begin with. That's just background noise when you're crafting a tale of tyranny versus freedom. Who has time for nuance? Like the fact that the interim government of Bangladesh ended the ban on the Jamaat-e-Islami Bangladesh, its student wing Islami Chhatra Shibir, and all associated organizations that have alleged involvement in anti-India terrorism and huge anti-India political baggage that dates back to the 1971 war. But then came the plot twist that's only surprising if you've been living under a rock. Among those released in Bangladesh's supposed people's uprising was someone with a very particular set of skills. Skills that make him a nightmare for India. Yes, this freedom fighter, Jashimuddin Rahmani, turned out to be less about fighting for freedom and more about fighting for, well, extremist ideologies, murdering bloggers and starting terrorist sleeper cells in India's northeast. And in a shocking revelation, it turns out that his freedom isn't exactly a win for democracy. Who knew? Of course, this turn of events puts a bit of a dampener on the earlier enthusiastic support from our Indian commentariat. It's hard to keep championing a movement as the second coming of democracy when its stars start looking more like the villains in an action thriller, or, you know, terrorists. Now, instead of rousing speeches about the fall of a tyrant, about how India has misread the situation, we're treated to the sound of awkward silence, or worse, convoluted explanations about how this must all be some misunderstanding. After all, no one would intentionally support a movement that harbors terrorists, right? It must be that Sheikh Hasina has spun this narrative once again, like the autocratic villain she's been made out to be. Clearly, this is all part of her plan, a masterstroke to discredit the noble students' revolution. Or, and here's a radical thought, maybe the reality is a bit more complex. than the simplistic tales of good versus evil that were being spun by our pseudo-liberal class here in India, which still holds great sway in the national grand conversation. Maybe, just maybe, the situation in Bangladesh isn't a one-dimensional struggle of oppressed versus oppressor. Maybe there is a dimension of outside help. Maybe there is a dimension of Western powers with vested interests in Bangladesh. Perhaps there's a lesson here about the dangers of romanticizing political movements without fully understanding the players involved. This is the reason why open and dangerous anti-India rhetoric is being passed off as the passions of a revolution where India and its support to an autocratic Sheikh Hasina are unignorable baggage inflaming a generation of Gen Z revolutionaries for whom India is enemy number one. This is the reason why dangerous falsehoods of India deliberately triggering floods in Bangladesh are amplified insidiously across social media, even here in India, and most certainly by the Western press. This is the reason why the clear persecution of minority Hindus is painted shamelessly as diversionary fake news, distracting from the passionate fires of change and the toppling of a grand villainy called Sheikh Hasina. A section of India's shameless political class, frustrated from being out of power for so long, has even openly warned that a Bangladesh-like situation could happen in India. Not for a moment have these shameless netas and ecosystems stopped to wonder about the depths they've plumbed just because they don't like who's in charge still in India. There is little doubt that India has a major challenge ahead with Bangladesh, one that's shape-shifting dangerously at India's doorstep. But will that stop India's commentariat from acknowledging that its misty-eyed swagat for Professor Muhammad Yunus as some messiah who will deliver Bangladesh from the hell of Hasina's hubris is just a tiny bit delusional and innocent? But that would require admitting that the earlier narrative was at best overly simplistic and at worst dangerously naive. And we all know that's not going to happen. After all, nothing says intellectual consistency in India like doubling down on a narrative even when it blows up in your face. So here's to the noble cause of a people's revolt. Just, watch out for the freedom fighters with terrorist ties. They're easy to miss when you're busy crafting that next great story.
In a big security alarm for India, the new Bangladesh interim government has freed a terror group chief. The caretaker government in Dhaka, led by Nobel Peace Laureate Muhammad Yunus, released Jashimuddin Rahmani, the chief of the Ansarullah Bangla team, or ABT, an Al-Qaeda-affiliated terrorist outfit that has been trying to establish a jihadi network with the help of sleeper cells in India. Rahmani, jailed over a decade ago for murdering a blogger, was released on parole on Monday, say local reports. In the past, several terrorists linked to the Ansarullah Bangla team have been arrested in India. As recently as May this year, 2 were taken in Assam. Despite facing charges under Bangladesh's anti-terror laws under erstwhile Prime Minister Sheikh Hasina, it is telling that Bangladesh's priorities were to release Jashimuddin Rahmani. Rahmani's ABT was banned in Bangladesh in 2015 during Sheikh Hasina's rule. Later, it rebranded itself as Ansar al-Islam, which was again banned in 2017. Sources tell India Today that the Pakistan-based Lashkar-e-Taiba reportedly partnered with the ABT to carry out terrorist attacks in India's northeastern states. LET's collaboration with ABT dates to 2022, when the latter attempted to establish a base in Bengal with the aim of launching attacks in India. Intelligence inputs from 2022 also indicate that around 50 to 100 ABT cadres were planning to infiltrate into Tripura. Chief Minister of Assam, Himanta Biswa Sarma, said that ABT jihadis weren't using regular communication tools but highly encrypted devices to avoid getting detected. Sheikh Hasina's regime saw a crackdown on anti-India forces in Bangladesh that found a safe haven during the earlier Bangladesh Nationalist Party, Jamaat-e-Islami regime from 2001 to 2006. As the Sheikh Hasina regime was overthrown following violent nationwide protests, India's worst fears that terrorists would be released is now coming true. Coinciding with Hasina's dramatic exit on August the 5th, some jailed leaders of the terrorist group were also freed by an armed mob attack on a high-security prison in Sherpur on August the 6th. More than 500 inmates escaped, one of them being Ikramul Haq alias Abu Talha, the India operations head of the Ansarullah Bangla team. He had been arrested in Dhaka last year based on Indian intelligence inputs. These developments are worrisome for India at large and the Northeast in particular. Worse, the release of a sworn anti-India terrorist simply cannot be an isolated move. The uprising in Bangladesh has been marked by clear anti-India sentiment. Right after Hasina's re-election in January, a call for a boycott of Indian goods gained momentum on social media. The recent devastating floods in Bangladesh have also been falsely blamed on India. The release of an anti-India terrorist, therefore, cannot be seen in isolation, but part of a larger plan. And that is worrying for India. Bureau Report, India Today.
And joining me live from Dhaka is Ahmed Hussain. He's a well-known Bangladeshi writer and journalist. He's just written a very, very balanced, very illuminating piece for Indian digital media, where the headline is Bangladesh Jamaat-e-Islami cannot go far with anti-India rhetoric. It must address its 1971 role. Ahmed, welcome. Thank you for your time here on India Today. The Indian government, the Indian system, Ahmed, is looking at various things happening in Bangladesh, with a certain degree of alarm. The support to the Sheikh Hasina dispensation earlier has obviously triggered a great deal of anger that continues to be there, in the political system of Bangladesh. But I want to ask you straight, with the release of people like Jashimuddin Rahmani, the unbanning of the Jamaat-e-Islami, they're not the same thing, of course. What, in your view, should be India's next step? It's a tricky situation as India tries to take its next steps with the new dispensation in Bangladesh.
I think India should make new friends. The problem is with India's foreign policy. It's a huge problem that it's very myopic in vision. It used to be like this. And throughout the last 15 years, all India has done, India has put all its eggs in one basket. And I think Indian bureaucracy has some degree of inefficient behavior in it too. Imagine someone like myself. I wrote a book in 2008. My book was published from Delhi. It was an anthology of South Asian writing. And I regularly write in the international media, but I have never been approached by the Indian High Commission in Dhaka. I was never invited. No one actually wanted to talk to me. What they did, they basically talked to their own people, a small coterie of people, and they got the information from there. They had very little clue whatsoever what is going on in Bangladesh and how things are moving on, how things are progressing, the way the dynamics have changed in the country. So India should actually, I believe that they should reach out to new friends, should make new friends, and should make new friends in the progressive area of the country. Bangladesh is booming with young people, with great ideas and great thinkers, great minds, who are not essentially anti-Indian. Some of them are against the establishment. They are as they are against the Bangladesh establishment as well. India should reach out and make new friends in Bangladesh. And the question of Rahmani that you talked about, Rahmani is basically, he's an ideologue of a group which is affiliated with Al-Qaeda. It's not only just a mere terrorist group. We are talking about a group which has Al-Qaeda affiliation. And they were quite open about it. It's not that it's a hidden group. They have kept their ideas hidden, etc., etc. It's not like that. It's just that the group is an affiliated Al-Qaeda group, Ansarullah Bangla team, and it's very worrying that someone like Rahmani or people who belong to the Ansarullah Bangla team are allowed to roam around free.
Yes. But Ahmed, how is that happening in that case? You know, because the world is seeing what happened in Bangladesh as, as a new dawn. Professor Mohammad Yunus has brought a sense of sobriety, and the promise of, a more equitable, fair leadership in Bangladesh. And one of the first moves, is the release of someone like a Jashimuddin Rahmani. It's not the only move, but there have been a series of moves. What kind of message does that send? Not just to India, but to the world, that a man who leads a group affiliated with the Al-Qaeda is released.
Yeah, but the problem with this case, in Rahmani's case, I can actually talk about Rahmani's case, how he got released. Rahmani's case was, the way it was framed, it was flawed. And it was basically a miscarriage of justice. Rahmani actually should have been tried for a slew of charges. Instead of that, they actually went out for they took a cheap shot, and they framed a case which basically would not have stood in a fair trial. So I think Rahmani's case is absolutely different, and I think Mohammad Yunus's government is going to, I hope they take it very seriously, the national and international concern, that as long as these extremist groups, and will address the concerns of India and other political actors that are active in the region.
Okay, Ahmed Hussain, appreciate you joining me even though you were outside. Thank you so much for your time. Look forward to having you back here on the show very, very soon. Well, attacks against Hindu minorities continue in Bangladesh, despite an entire section of the Indian media and liberal ecosystem pretty much denying that it ever happened. While battling flood mayhem, the Hindu community in Bangladesh, in one part of the country, claims that they are being denied relief by the Mohammad Yunus caretaker government in Dhaka. In one particular viral video reported on by India Today's Ashutosh Mishra, who was in Bangladesh until a few days ago, a Bangladeshi Hindu is seen standing on a rooftop waiting to be rescued, but is left stranded. He claims rescue officials are ignoring Hindus during the relief operations. Okay, I want to just put the sound up on that video for just a moment before I go to it.
ত্রাণের কোন লোক আমরা আমাদের চোখে পড়ে নাই এই পাস্ট আপনাদেরকে দেখছি আমরা অনেক লোক আলোক দিয়া মহেশপুর এদিকে যায় হিন্দু তখন একটা টলার ঘুরাই ওরা আবার ব্যাক করে নিয়ে যায় কারণ আমাদের অপরাধ আমরা হিন্দু এটাই আমরা কোনো দলের সাথে ইনভলভ না তারপর আমরা অসহায় কিন্তু আমরা এখানে আসলে সবগুলো পরিস্থিতির গতিকে অসহায় রয়েছি উদ্ধারের কোনো লোক হেলিকপ্টার উপরে উঠতেছে কিন্তু এখানে যাচ্ছে না এখানে আমাদের এখানে খুলনাইয়া বরিশাল ওরা কিন্তু কালিদুর ইউনিয়ন ৮ নং ওয়ার্ড ছেউরিয়া তুলাবাড়িয়া হিন্দু এলাকা ত্রাণের কোন লোক আমরা আমাদের চোখে পড়ে নাই এই পাস্ট আপনাদেরকে দেখছি আমরা অনেক
You see in this video, the man you see in this video alleging that there is selective rescue and relief work going on, and that the Hindu community in Bangladesh is being ignored even during flood rescue operations, is live right now with India Today's Ashutosh. Ashutosh, over to you. Live conversation.
Well, Shiva, more importantly, we have bring out this report from social media platforms. I have been getting SOS messages from Bangladesh. And on your screen, you see two members from the Hindu community. One is wearing mask, who's in Dhaka at the moment, and we need to protect his identity because there could be a threat. Is a face, is a member from the another community. And in the second window, you see Niloy. Niloy is a member from the Hindu community. He is from the very much Feni district. Remember the video that was gone viral was from Feni district. State taking this question to Niloy. We have seen this video that several areas, the Hindu members are saying that all the relief rescue works are being diverted to the other areas. And because of they being Hindu, the help is not reaching to them. SK, who's in Dhaka, because we did receive several complaints, and SK was also amongst those whistleblowers, those who informed us about the situation. SK, just explain about the situation. There have the several complaints that few members from different flood-affected districts did come out with that how they have been ignored during the relief and aid operations.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me here, getting me here. I'm from Bangladesh. Currently, I'm living in Dhaka. but my home district is in Kumilla. So right now I'm sharing with you a very negligent incident against Hindu community at Burichong, Kumilla Burichong. There is a relief camp. This is a organization here. 2 lakhs taka is the budget for their the food or the cooked food. So out of this budget, there is a thing that 80 kilogram beef for the affected people. But there are so many Hindus people here. But the authority, the relief camp authority, didn't keep any without beef, right? Like the chicken items. So how my question is that in the flood affected area, how can you discriminate? How can you neglect the Hindu community? How is this your behavior? How you treat us?
Nilo is live from Feni district, which is, so Nilo, you heard already, SK, there are some places where the discrimination against Hindus have been done. The magnitude of such may not be as high, but how many cases you have seen of the people complaining that there have been discrimination, maybe because of the local administration, some of the extremist organization, or some of the people. But how many such cases you have heard about in Feni and other areas? Because the video that was gone viral was from Feni district, ward number 4.
Okay. Yeah, I have heard 2 cases about this, that Hindus are neglected from relief. Most of the peoples and organizations didn't go their area. After that situation, and probably after 3 days, I and my team go to those areas, and we give relief to those people who are neglected.
So those who are in the affected areas, where are they taking shelter? Because I got some reports that they're taking shelter in some local temples or the volunteers from the Hindu communities who are coming out. So how are they managing, coping up with this situation?
Yeah, some organizations from Hindu community like Sanatan Vidyarthi Sanshad, a victim came from this organization. The president of the organization, Sri Kushal Baran Chakraborty, he ordered to serve reliefs to the flood-affected people. So the team members manage a huge amount of reliefs, and they give them to the flood-affected peoples.
That was a live conversation that India Today's Ashutosh Mishra was having with people he'd met during his coverage and travels in Bangladesh, including people who were there when this particular video was filmed. Discrimination is happening in certain instances. There is a certain amount of negligence that is taking place. Hopefully, the spotlight on this story will bring about some change in Bangladesh.